Or 501.
I've had stories since I was a kid.
Oh,
I don't know if I've got that in me.
Yeah, unless you grind them up and.
Well, I know.
That's what pixie sticks are for, man.
It's the same business.
Let's just say dares are horrible, but I think we all know.
Yeah. Wait, what conversation can start?
That's unless they.
Oh, you guys have anything?
I'm an elected official, isn't that in keeping with?
Only if you're the mayor, Toronto.
Boston,
Oh,
isn't it? The one from Boston just resigned today. Baltimore, you're right. She was under FBI investigation for
All right.
various drug activities.
We're gonna let Dick get a seat and then we will dive in records are on. All right, so the audio record attendance, we've got Brian, Nina, myself, Sid, Pam, Linda, Eddie, Dick, Evan, Kelly, and Shelley. All right, so there were a couple outstanding things for people to look up. There were, because we didn't know there was a town hall that we went to, we maybe talk through any carryover from that. And then we're going to dive into another memo. Kind of progress. Good? All right. So, town hall we did not have as good a crowd as we did the first time. Those who were there were engaged. That being said, they were also probably counted on you.
I thought we had like 12 or so.
If you just count people that were related to people that were on the commission
Okay, then.
and bring your president of the council, there were 4.
Just we counted that.
Not counting Bonnie or Matt, there was 4 additional people. Diane.
But that's all right, they still, those who came on vacation, had something out of it. That's all.
It's kind of points out even harder challenge we have getting this thing passed.
We do, I think we had a miss in that there was something going on with community garden at the same time, and I didn't realize that last.
That kind of that big an impact, right? Because the people who were there wasn't like 5 or, there wasn't 10 people at that thing either, according to their Facebook post. And it was Lisa, who maybe would have shown up.
Yeah,
Lisa
she would have been.
would have shown up, right? Jen Falcon, who might have, right? But, and then, yeah, I would have expected a big impact. But maybe I'm just pessimist.
So, I mean, weather pretty nice, we've got nothing to do. But those who were there, like I said, were engaged, asking questions, asking for information, spoke to Bill.
That's like cool. See who shows up.
I'm down for that.
One big word from the experience.
What do you guys think?
Are we gonna use?
I'm trying to think back on like some of the questions that were asked, and I don't know that there was really anything there that covered new ground that we hadn't already discussed, debated, and argued about quite a bit.
It also kind of felt that people there were the first time catching up at the base level. Too. We're different out
There seemed to be kind of an undertone of concern about transition, which is just, we haven't gotten to that yet, so we weren't able to really alleviate that concern. But
Maybe now that the weather's warm and everybody has yards and things to do, we gotta change the time to earlier in the day. in and out, just then.
For this meeting, or
That's-
manage?
That's the middle of the next time if we do it again.
And that's what I thought.
Or maybe change the format instead of to a town hall to an open house.
Or something, yeah.
We're there, we have material, we are available to answer.
We can move it up a little bit, some people are still doing church too, getting out on
Saturday?
what's that, oh, Saturday.
I tell them, I'm thinking, okay.
Somebody did send me feedback, one of those in attendance, and they said they still don't know how to make up their mind, so they're not swayed one way or the other. Thinking about it, which is great, and good information, which is great. Some of the concerns were, turn off the cabin lights, I don't know what that. It's sound like.
Yeah, so you see those.
In case that was mine.
No idea. The mayor election at the same time as the charter determination and that confusion, which I believe touched on the transition. That's was a concern of this person, and also just the same concern we expressed, getting the information out to people, getting residents to know what they're voting on. Because most people, they don't know what they're voting on, don't vote yes.
I worry about that, trying to but we should, they don't go yes.
I mean, they do in this case, it works for us, but.
Well, yeah, I
Most of the time, no.
Well, I wouldn't, but
I think a lot of people don't, but conversely, I've kind of been there in a sense, I wonder if a lot of people didn't vote yes to, should we have a charter commission out of a general sense of dissatisfaction with the current setup, and less because they knew what they wanted. They were probably, a lot of them probably said, well, I don't know what a charter involves, but yes, I want the change.
see, that's my concern, is that he's right, people do just.
Because that creates a challenge for us. If they wanted to change but didn't know how to define it, we're the ones on the hook for defining it, and if we don't say it and do it in a way that makes them happy, what do we do?
We still have, the political pack we had talked about, because that would be something we would need to say, vote yes, vote yes, vote yes, and get it out there. Because a lot of people aren't paying attention, might need to start paying attention or vote yes.
I'm wondering if they trust us, because like I said, we've been here with big families, I mean, maybe they trust us.
Yeah, that was, something else, two other things that this person mentioned was they were concerned that some of the movement for change about the government is motivated by dislike of someone in the government currently versus dislike of the government we have itself. Be it council or everybody's got a concern, and that's perception. So that was almost, in their email came across as they wouldn't want the whole government to change just because they didn't like one person kind of thing. And then, what's the other one? Administrator, they weren't real comfortable with the fact that we weren't defining if it was part-time administrator, part-time mayor, full-time administrator. That's not defined in that manual. We're voting for it, it's not.
It's kind of in the sense that money was a concern too on the administrator side. I don't know if we had a good enough prepared answer for the room when it came to the, we're gonna let council figure that out.
Absolutely, like, I think they understood that. It's the bio I got.
I don't know what to do different though, we can't put in the charter that the administrator's salary shall be X, like, it doesn't work that way.
Like, if it was a part-time administrator, and the salary was this much, you just pick like some random numbers, 50, 60, 70s, literal numbers, and say what percent of our budget that would be.
Yes, and we could look at the municipalities that do, the smaller municipalities that do have both a mayor and an administrator, and just be able to say, of the 15 that do, 14, the mayor is part-time, or, you know, and give statistics on what small places do when they have both a mayor and an administrator, and give them facts.
Seems to me also to say that the salaries would be in line with whatever we can afford in the budget.
Which I think that was implied with what Rainey said
Yeah, I know.
at the meeting, but it didn't make anybody happy.
But just, well, that's everything we can promise, isn't it? In a sense.
I'm sure the John School has actually really good statistics, on what administrators get, and they probably don't have it by different types of municipalities.
I think the Ohio Municipal League has that as well.
Chuck Glenn might have it for the new grads, they might get those kinds of positions, which was one area that we, when saying the population. That was correct.
To put it in perspective, I don't know, and I would guess that most people in the village don't know what the salaries are now, and that should be public record. So if we would put that out, and especially for
It is public record, it's just
fiscal
for
officer, I don't know how much he's paid, but
30 plus
just to give
benefits.
them a reference.
No, the mayor.
Is anybody willing to maybe take that as a homework item, so look those up, find those out as far as from municipal league or?
I'll contact with, John Glenn Center, and I'll talk to Eric and he knows how much he makes, and, then, what the budget has in it for the mayor.
I have a suggestion, as we get closer to the date where people are actually thinking about whether they're gonna vote yes or no, I think it would be very effective to have some flyers that are personal, that are personal testimony from 2 or 3 of us, that says, here are the things we've tackled and what we think about it. And I think if we did that on a local basis, if we did it, you know, the people,
Yeah,
You got it?
I know, I don't find her person. Thank you.
Sorry, you carry on, personal.
That's good, thank
yeah,
Yes.
and if we did it on an area basis where the people that are signing this and testifying, were known in the neighborhood, I mean, you could do a flyer with a couple of other people on it for the Jordan, no?
No.
You don't want to go on record?
You can talk to your neighbors.
Oh, I haven't talked to my neighbors.
But this just seems to me an effective way to get it down to the neighborhood level, that, and, you know, you could do it for part of River Lake Road, and I could do it for Maplewood, you could do it for the upper part, I could do it for the lower, part, whatever.
I'll talk to Deb. I'll talk to Deb.
No, I'm only talking to Lucius.
Lucius, You can't vote. I said it before, I think we should really think about doing something like what Dick said, but getting some sort of column either in the MPCA newsletter or Village Update.
So here's the thing, they're willing to, somebody has to take ownership of writing it and getting it to them.
I think all of us are proficient in English language, so.
It's not a question of ability, it's a question of time.
Well, I haven't had any time until now, and I'm off for the summer, so I can be helpful, and I can write a reasonable sentence, so. But I'm want to work with some other people too.
Do we want to come up with a staff form, like, maybe the handouts, so everybody discovered?
Well,
Or, I mean, according for the MPC update, we just put 300, 500 words, right? That's a column.
have asked maybe to see it's on the
I
chart.
understand.
The green one, you know,
Yeah.
it is.
Either one's.
Is willing to put something in there, of course, if they have something to be close. It wouldn't be necessarily flyer size if they're on size on it, but
I mean, just like, if you want to write a, 200, 300 word testimonial saying, here's what I think the charter's gonna do, here's why I think it's good, I think that would really help. We are allowed to do that. We're allowed to talk to church.
We're not allowed to advocate for one or the other, we are allowed to give them information.
Really?
See, that.
That's what the political action committee for.
That's the reason I
We
mentioned
have to
that.
worry about coordination on this.
So maybe Jen Hawkins
Do
will
we
make
have
that
to worry
work.
about coordination rules with this pack?
I don't think so, because I know that there are people that are in public office that are part of PACs, and you just have to really walk that line carefully.
I mean, we're allowed to advocate, talking to your neighbors, saying, what do you think? It's a good idea. Right?
Oh, yes, I think
Where's the line?
it's when you start putting stuff into the village update.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think we can talk to your neighbor, absolutely.
So are we allowed to advocate to our neighbors in written
I
form?
think if you're advocating to your neighbor, you're doing that as a resident that knows a lot about this charter commission. You're not necessarily representing the charter commission.
Oh, no.
No, so it's just having it in a public newsletter is the problem?
I think we can put it in the newsletter and have it be, here's what we've done, here are the changes. And you can say that by having 7 council members, then there's less likelihood of a tie. And, you can just.
But we can't say, I'm in favor of this thing.
You can say that, but I believe the difference is, you can say, this is what it is, this is how I feel about it, but you can't then end with, and vote yes. It cannot be a call to action.
Yes.
It can be informative, you can even inform your own opinion. At least this is what I had gotten when I researched PAC stuff before.
Makes sense.
So what about this idea of doing flyers for your street?
Would it make more sense for the PAC to do that then?
Yes. But no, I mean, yeah.
But, NBC and village update still should
I know that MPCA will put, MPCA is not publishing
be.
anything political, so we can ask, but I don't believe they would put this in their MPCA newsletter, right? They've made it clear that they don't want that in MPCA publications any longer, right? And 2, they also are only publishing quarterly or less anymore.
Yeah.
So, we would do better to get into the village update.
So Dick could write a nice thing about, we're working right along. Here's some of the differences, people have differences, and then, well, you know more than mine.
Citizens of, these are what's on the current government, and here's how we're trying to address those. Interesting.
Make your own decision.
And since the newsletters just came out, Dick, you do things quickly, so you have it done in plenty of time.
Okay. I'll write something and bring it here and we'll see what happens.
Okay. Thank you.
We take 2 hours to discuss it.
No.
If you want to,
If you want to email it, limit it to 2 hours.
You're supposed to only shut things down for like 5 minutes, not.
You could also maybe send it through the email.
So I found this if you look at the screen, I found this on the OCMA website. It's dated in 2012, but it's a 109-page salary survey, and it has breakdowns of just everything. So this is average annual salary of mayors, mayor with city manager, or city administrator, I don't know that. But I mean, if you look at some of these numbers, they're
Is it by month or the total?
average annual salary.
But this is mayor's salary for a city manager
Right.
or a city.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's good.
So it's like,
And then
there's,
you
a
go
task
down.
force administrator, that's for sure.
City manager.
City manager.
What's city
makes-
manager of the city?
All right, so here's the problem. You got city managers seem to make well over 100 most of the time.
Look at the size.
And their city
Yeah.
is different than ours.
Yeah.
Assistant City Administrator Gahanna, Grove City, Grove Board, Canal Winchester, City Council members.
I don't do commissioner.
And did you say you found that on the website?
Yes.
Yeah, I can show you. So if you go to, Document Center, there.
Yeah.
It'll bring this up, and I clicked on resources for communities. And then I was just scrolling through here and just kind of clicking on stuff, and I found it in the list. I don't remember where. Oh, it's the very first one.
I would be interested in knowing the school.
Yeah, they'll have, like averages for,
Finance directors.
Canal Winchester pays their finance and management director $83,000.
So anyway, I found that.
Yeah, no, that's good.
So, what now?
Probably should concentrate on comparable sizes for our buildings.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just probably closer than some others.
It's closer than some of the others, like Canal Winchester's still a lot bigger than us. Right? My understanding.
Everything on there is at least twice our size, right? Because we're a village and these are all cities. And the cities are in the minimum of 5,000.
Canal Winchester is 8,294.
So that's four of us. The problem is you can't just make it straight proportional because there's a minimum amount of work required no matter how small you are. So,
All right, so Shelley and Kelly had, they were gonna look up forms.
Yeah, I was going to check into the postal thing. And
You better find those.
a bulk mailing rate. And in speaking with Pam, our printer's got a permit on it.
That's right, I haven't,
Oh, no, if you, I'll call
yeah, talk to Paula,
her.
Inscape, yeah,
I'll call her.
Yeah.
But I did find out that if the committee were to get their own, it's like $240 for the application. And I don't think that would save us a whole lot of money in postage costs to pay the fee to get it and then do our mailing, so.
So how does that work? How does the bulk mail rate work?
Well, when I worked at the law firm, we paid the application fee, they gave us the permit, and then we had our newsletter printed, just like the village update. It uses that as a postal stamp, and we paid half or less of first class mail. I mean, it was substantially reduced. So I'm gonna call and see if that's our permit, the village's permit, that's on both the NPCA newsletter and the village update, and it is, you know, and stuff.
And we usually service NPCA's. But.
That's okay.
But
If that
I
turns out
believe-
to be the case,
Right, I believe that NPCA would allow us to use that permit. They wouldn't allow us to put us in their publication, but I think they would allow us to mail on their permit.
okay, well, I'll
I can talk to the person in charge of that.
Philip talks.
It's not cheap.
Oh, now you pop your head up, you're so far.
I'll talk to Inky and see what I find out, and if I find out something other, then I will contact the post office and get precise information.
is the village update going out first class, or is that bulk also?
No, it's usually the same permit.
Oh, Oh.
This is, you know.
I looked at it today.
Yeah.
Um,
So we also,
yeah,
they may be moving that from Inscoop, so we need to be.
just because they used to have just the villager, which was sort of, yes.
if it turns out that permit belongs to NPCA, they can of course take that with them with it. So I'll see what they say.
And then Paul's not really doing some follow-up on budget, so we're just gonna keep that open. We're gonna follow up on hiring police officers from the week.
Yeah, I looked last week. I just tried to look again because I thought of a new search term. I thought it got me there, it didn't. Here's the bottom line. I cannot find the answer in Ohio Revised Code. It makes me wonder if it's in the administrative code, and that's the Shadowlands. We can, that would, I guess, be my next step. I was also thinking about just emailing Paul, but that costs us money, so. The thing is, I just can't find anything that specifically says a police officer can only be a police officer after they've been appointed by a legislative body. So, And I know that that's a really specific question, which is why I'm having trouble finding it.
Would somebody in one of the municipalities that are involved with that property would know how they use it?
Yeah, I'll be honest, all I've done is Google. I have not called anybody. That would be my next step.
Anything else outstanding that anyone was researching that maybe I would not know?
Did a quick search for villages about our size and that village in New Jersey. I found the village of Bethel. They are at 27 or 2.7K, so they're just a little bit bigger than us. And they pay their administrator 64K. So,
What do they get in there?
we find it. It's in the, actually, the way I found this is because the village of Bethel is being fiscally terminated.
Is it?
Bethel, BTHL, it's in Claremont County. Let me see.
That's fantastic.
Never heard of
What
it.
does that make absorb something else?
They just looked like they were in a fiscal emergency, so I think they were going through with the bankruptcy. Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's because we're paying their administrator $64,000 a year.
Somebody's done a good job, look at their job.
Hey.
Never know.
I know we can get some good people out of the John Glenn School. I know that OSU had, or OU has that one, graduated from it. Can't remember the name. Boyer School. Yeah.
Ah,
So,
And I'm sure that, the Johnstown Fellow and all that stuff, I mean, I'm sure they have meetings of, city administrators and managers have some organization, they go lunch once a month or something.
I think was the site he pulled up, the Ohio City Manager Association.
So there you go, so they get together and they'll, oh, did you know Minerva Park is,
they pay the mayor $6,000. But they also pay their council members $3,000.
Which, really well,
No wonder they weren't that big.
plot twist, then I think I'll. All right. So are you gonna take that away for our next?
Yeah, I'll try to get more information for people for next week.
Are you here next Thursday?
I'm here next Thursday,
Not Sunday.
not this Sunday.
we do have meetings.
Could ask Lynn, I don't know, Brian can tell me, ask Lynn if she could ask Jean about the hiring of police officers only by appointment through a resolution, because we do it that way all the time.
We do, yeah.
And Jean is the one that's our legal counsel.
Oh, no, it's good. It's like 7, just go, we're just asking this officer, and they're allowed to do it that way.
No, I think it's the police officer union, or whatever that one is, might know what the ins and outs are legally.
Yes.
Because, yeah, so yes, civil service person, they know civil service law.
I mean, if they were going to use a capital law. That's interesting. All right, so to your report again, minutes to approve. And I don't remember the dates of the minutes. I apologize.
Well, we didn't have anything last Sunday, so I think we're just sitting at last Thursdays, correct?
I have the 18th and the 25th,
Okay.
and they have no writing on them, so I think they have not.
So the 25th was mine, the 18th, yeah, so it's divided on two.
Yep, I did.
Did them both, they're both
You
mine.
did, and they're beautiful.
Thanks.
And I believe that the 18th you forgot to send until the 25th.
Yeah, very word.
That's what it was.
And you do need to change the date on the 25th, because you didn't want it, you sent to us.
Well, I would correct that.
That's your
Well, it's already corrected it.
There you go. And honest, I didn't see anything in either of them. And I look hard just to harass you.
Please do so.
Not your motivation, Sean.
I was reading quickly, it didn't jump out.
So yeah, we, for those who sent them both PDF for Brian, I didn't send them, but it was.
So I moved that we approve the minutes for April 18th and April 25th.
want me to get
Where?
one at a time, so April 18th, second.
All in favor?
Uh,
I'm going to abstain. I'm sorry, I haven't. Still approved, I know. Back to this end there, it's okay.
And,
I'm looking for the 25th.
Oh, I move that we, I move that we approve the minutes for April.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor. So. I have to go. Sure.
number 8.
It's been a while. We have some, let's go through some lists. Article 9. Article 9. The next one, Kelly.
Sure.
All right, finance, taxation, debt, and contracting. Also, the audio record has to stay with them, directly with us, and also Eric. All right. Okay. Yes, that's everyone.
So we do not want to try to mess with Articles 7 and 8 right now? We're not supposed to just skip ahead to them? Or 9?
Yes. All right, so just for the benefit of audio record, I'm just going to read. The next section of the charter addresses a potentially broad range of subjects: finance, taxation, debt, contracting, and purchasing. The attached tables from several local charters show how varied the breadth and depth of the section can be. Even the title of the section varies widely among charters. OBEX does a good job of simplifying its finance, taxation, and debt. Finance, taxation, contracting would also match up well. And then, as ever, he goes through and gives us individual questions that we can talk through, and also examples to look at. So the first question is, given the complexity of Ohio law on finance, taxation, debt, budgeting, appropriations, etc., most of these sections start with a basic statement that Ohio laws in this area generally apply except as may be provided by the charter or by council. Some examples are section 901 of the New Albany Charter, section 901 of Hartford, 801 of Dublin, and 801 of OS. Pickerington Charter does not contain that broad statement. So you calls that out as well. So the benefit of including provisions such as this is that it simultaneously opts into existing Ohio law in these areas while maintaining the authority of the village, whether in a charter or through action by council, to create its own rules in areas that it is permitted to under Ohio law. So. Thoughts on the first question, just including that broad.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah. Does anybody like any particular one better than others?
New Albany is concise and to the point, and it's almost exactly like one of the others.
Laws of the state of Ohio relating generally to budgets, appropriations, taxation, debt, bonds, assessments, deposits, and investments, funds, and other fiscal matters of the village shall be applicable, except as otherwise provided in this charter or by council.
Yeah.
So, New Albany.
Okay. The default fiscal year for Ohio municipalities is the calendar year. Although the General Assembly could change that rule, it's not likely to do so. However, a couple of the charter examples do specify a different fiscal year.
Don't think.
Or, I'm sorry, but what their fiscal year is, which would be controlling if the state law ever changed. Basically, the CYA, make sure that we get to stay on the same fiscal year. I don't know if the village does now.
We're January,
I know there are some,
different organizations, including governmental organizations that use a different fiscal year, like the US military is, I think, ends in October or some nonsense like that.
The federal government.
Is that the federal government? Okay. What's that? Is it
At the
in
end.
May? Okay. It was something with October, I remember, I just don't remember what it was.
Your state is also June, July fiscal year. It's really annoying.
Well, I'm just wondering, should we send an email to Kim Foley and say, hey, would a different fiscal year make things easier or more difficult for you? Do you have a thought?
Actually, I think she.
Did she address that?
She was talking with us.
I don't remember.
I think she affirmed that it is January to December 31st, and I think she likes it because the way of other things are.
Could it be left open such that it's, whatever the state is or whatever council names it by legislation? That way, if for some unforeseen and unknowable reason at this point, we want to change it, it would require a rework of the charter and it's flexible.
I agree with that statement. I would say that just add the small third sentence that says, for the first year of the charter, it shall be January through December, just to cover it. 'Cause otherwise it'll revert to the states.
Yeah.
Which would be a pain.
All of these just says fiscal year, the village, the budget, the accounting, and all of these. And what purposes should be a calendar year?
Oh, we got a couple of comments there, what do people think?
I say keep it where it is.
I don't have Sean's feeling.
I
don't know what it is.
I don't want to either.
But I do like the idea of leaving it open for the council could.
So that's really what I mean by the two options though, like, do we want to specify, not specify at all, or do we want to go with Brian's idea and let council make a make an ordinance?
I think we should say it should be December, January, unless changed by council.
And I also like the comment that Eric had too, about specifying the first year.
So I think you specify January, December, or however that proper calendar year, unless,
I almost like not specifying it, because that's one more thing that, do we need to shake it up or just leave it as is?
Because even under statute, council has the right to change it, don't they? I mean, if you're a statutory government, council can still change their, I got questions for all
Oh,
of you.
notice the 901 that we just approved, but we're saying that these things, other fiscal measures of the village shall be applicable, except as otherwise provided in this
Right, so
charter
we
or
could
by
just,
council.
if none of us feel strongly about it, then we could just be silent, have the charter be silent on it, and it will default to the state law.
What state law right now is,
January, December.
no, didn't you just say the state?
The state runs a June, July, the
Yeah,
way they run it. So obviously,
So the default fiscal calendar for the municipality
Yeah, I was gonna
is
say,
January, December.
I guess I should have been more
State
clear,
budget
it would
is
default to whatever the state law dictates for villages.
next.
Yes.
The only thing I can think with Kim is that she does that UAN software. And that if that is by most municipalities.
it's covered.
Yeah, okay.
So number three.
Some charters include provisions about operating budgets. See section 903 of the New Albany, 802 of Dublin, and section 702 to 708 of Britain charters. And planning for capital improvements, see section 803 of the Dublin Charter. We want to have anything similar to ours.
So here's 903 of New Albany. In addition to the annual tax budget required by the Ohio Revised Code, the administrator in consultation with the director of finance shall, by the first scheduled council meeting in November, submit to council a proposed operating budget for the ensuing fiscal year. The administrator shall prepare, revise, and adjust the budget estimates for submission to council. Council shall adopt a balanced budget. Proposed operating budget shall contain a recommended appropriation ordinance. Council shall, by December 21st of every year, adopt both the operating budget and appropriation ordinance as submitted or amended. Should council fail to enact the proposed or amended operating budget and appropriation ordinance by December 21st, both shall be deemed to have been adopted finally by council as submitted by the administrator. Given that we put in the duties of the administrator that they shall be doing this, I feel like it makes sense to have a provision like this that spells it out a little better.
Do we want specific dates or shall we talk about whatever the fiscal year is? This one has,
This has specific dates in it. I have no concept of whether those are good dates or bad dates.
Well, for fiscal year that ends.
For the fiscal year,
December 31st, it makes sense.
Yes, and it's, and New Albany states their fiscal year is.
you leave the dates on and say fiscal year, whatever it is.
If you could get around that by saying 90 days prior to the end of this, beginning of next fiscal year.
I think right now, but it's sort of parallel to an appropriations ordinance, and I just think it needs to be done by December 31st.
What are the fiscal year?
It matches the fiscal year, so I don't know.
It could go. I
I think it's pretty unlikely that we would ever change our fiscal year.
However,
Well, then the process.
Pickerington says the city manager at least 35 days prior to the beginning of each budget year. So if you wanted to,
So are we liking, what was that again?
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, if 35 days is long enough. But
Not actually, I'm just saying there's another way to say it without having it dated attached. If there are people that prefer that.
Do this, I can grab this paragraph and we can just change the number of days.
remember, Pickerington also has other sections that
Yes, they certainly.
are tied
do.
together. So they've got data final adoption, failure to adopt is a whole different section versus New Albany's is just a paragraph.
Budget and appropriation.
Yeah, I think that if you use New Albany paragraph and then just.
Or do we like how Pickerington does it?
Only because if you look at Pickerington, I don't know what happened to those poor people, but I mean, they spell out all kinds of stuff.
They do seem very detailed.
Yes.
So, am I using New Orleans?
Yes.
Anybody feel differently or real okay with all?
I guess that, yeah.
And then just,
It also sort of accounts for the fact that you have to get it done by the 21st. Then there's the holidays, and if you didn't get it done, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a lot to do.
So if it's 21st of the last day of the year.
are we leaving the dates? Are we saying 30 days before the end of, before the start of next
We
fiscal
should,
year?
I don't think we should put dates just because we didn't specify.
All right, so what's our deadline? 30 days, 35 days, 100
Can
days?
we, before we pull out a number out of that hat, could we maybe ask him if that would be reasonable?
Sure.
Wow. You're the only one that did it. So Kelly's not the one asking.
I don't have.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll ask.
And it was really just that she's going to have another Q&A session in June. I think it was June 10th or something. Anybody else wants?
Just what would be a reasonable, have the proposed budget by this deadline and then it needs to be approved several days before the start of the next fiscal year.
Number 4. All 5 of the sample charters address contracting and specifically competitive bidding. And then calling out the charter sections. As the OPEX administrator discussed with the commission, he found these provisions very useful, although he did express a desire for even greater flexibility than the current charter language provided for. However, only the OPEX charter makes express provisions for using alternative project delivery methods, such as construction manager risk, design build, and single prime contractor. Most Ohio public authorities, even statutory municipalities, now use one of these methods for constructing significant improvements because of changes made to Ohio statutes regarding public construction in 2012. After consulting with attorneys at B&E LLP's Construction Law Practice Group, they recommend that charter language for construction of public improvements include the following elements to maximize the effectiveness of the charter on this subject. Broad definition of what types of improvements are covered. Monetary threshold for when competitive procurement is required, as well as a prohibition against splitting contracts connected to a single improvement to avoid that threshold. When a formal competitive bidding process is not being used, power to use alternative project delivery methods such as construction manager at risk, design build, single prime contractor, under procedures established by the council, as long as price competitiveness is preserved if the monetary threshold for competitive procurement is exceeded. The power to decide which delivery method to use should be vested in a single village official or with the council. This is just when a formal competitive bidding process is being used, delegate power to the council to establish procedures for bidding, such as advertising, whether to prohibit award of contract in excess of a specified percentage of engineer's estimate. The bid award standard, lowest and best, is the recommended standard, etc. Power to exempt a procurement from competitive bidding procedures in the case of unusual circumstances, such as an emergency that threatens public safety or property, or when the service or item is available through only a single provider, or when funding could be lost due to time constraints, all upon council approval, could be a simple majority or a supermajority. Language exempting the village from having to escrow retained funds or paying interest on them. Language accepting contracts for professional services, meaning architectural, engineering, surveying, testing, inspection, legal, from competitive price procurement and from separate council approval if the council has already appropriated monies for such services. And possibly include language requiring additional council approval once cumulative contract modifications total to an amount in excess of a certain percentage of the original contract value.
I'm so sorry, I didn't realize this was read that. So that's a lot of stuff, and I know that these things are near and dear to some people's hearts and not so much others. So do we need a translation of what all those things were, or do people have things they just want to chime in and say, it's brilliant?
Don't they have a lot of construction work
They do,
to take care of this?
but that's not the other.
So Paul sent another email where they wrote it for us.
That's helpful.
Bless his heart, when we asked you to ask them to do it. Because, oh my God. oh my
Well, and it has
They
that,
borrowed from
build-
another charter.
design build provision that you have.
This is what we want, sort of like charter maps, right? Where we always fill in systems. They can't want to be ladies, like.
Are you guys okay with me cutting and pasting that in? And then
Well, let's read it. And
Okay,
go for it.
I feel so bad, I just did. I was writing two extra words in my notes. Wow.
I spent a lot of time in court today.
Alright, so. This section sets forth procedures for the procurement of contracts for designing and construction of public improvements, including without limitation roads, bridges, traffic, signalization, and signage, sidewalks, buildings, treatment works, storm sewers, and other stormwater management improvements, flood control improvements, sanitary sewers, water lines, and other utilities, parks and monuments. Ooh, is there anything that wasn't included in that list?
So the lakes would be either under stormwater management, yeah.
Flood control.
Flood control.
I mean, high rise is under there, but.
You said.
you could probably throw them in under parks.
Yeah,
Buildings,
throw it in.
All right, this section also sets forth procedures for the procurement of contracts for the purchase of equipment, supplies, or materials for the operation and maintenance of public improvements and otherwise promoting the functions and operations of the village, which contracts may or may not be associated with construction of a public improvement. So in layman's terms, public improvements and other stuff that's just necessary for running the village.
basically, just anything having to do with the physical aspects of Minerva.
Anything we're forgetting about the long laundry list?
I mean, look, I can do this pretty darn easy.
Oh, no, I thought leads were, that was fine with,
I think
flood control and,
Everything's better.
stormwater management.
I think we're pretty well.
Okay, so we're writing this for the future. Minerva Park would decide to have its own, I don't know what, some kind of wireless, incredible, yeah, is that another
Sure.
utility?
So, yeah, so if you, it's always good, even if it's never used. OBEX is very forward-thinking in how to use the Ohio Constitution when it comes to utilities. The Ohio Constitution gives municipalities a great deal of leeway in setting up their own utility. I would utilize their section on that specifically. It is in there. Now, you may never set up your own gas utility, electric utility, or anything like that, but you can set up all those utilities, including wire, Wi-Fi, or fiber, whatever you want. Incorporating that will do no harm. So
Making sure we put something in, utilities when that, in that
just
utility
use,
section. right?
use their language.
Okay. Okay. Well, it was, you do, department or something, yeah. Well, not yet, because we haven't talked about utilities.
There is probably a utility subsection.
Let's keep on going down
Yep.
this.
Okay, sorry, so we're not adding here.
No, it's not here.
Okay, keep that in your head. I will pass on.
Yeah, I think.
All right, consistent with section, whatever we number it, and except as otherwise provided in this section, the administrator or an authorized designee shall award and execute all contracts on behalf of the village. I'm gonna pause because that's part of the process. Is that who we think would be the right person?
Does that mean that it is not council authorizing the administrator to execute the contract?
That's exactly right. So the administrator would then carry that out. But if something happens midway through, and I've had this happen in a couple of bidding projects, then the administrator has the authority to quickly change, and Rod was my special counsel on one particular project, which we did a design build, and we had to change gears in what we were doing with the lowest and best and made it work. And council already given the authority for the contract, the administrator accepting the grant, and all that stuff. So essentially, as long as you allow the administrator to carry out the orders, we give him some flexibility, him or her some flexibility to work nicely.
Again, it's just, the administrator shall award and execute all contracts. So
You would the administrator signing the contract, not president of council.
yeah, that's fine.
One foot in the council.
I had assumed our intention was that council by legislation would authorize the administrator to execute that.
Well, do you mean it for every single contract, or do you mean?
You have
yes,
to
we
appropriate
approve
the money.
this, this
Yes.
doesn't sign it.
Who's gonna designate in case the administrator can't do it? It doesn't say.
Yeah.
Because that's in a different section.
We've dealt with administrator absence in the administrator article.
So you're talking about, Brian, are you just like a big project, and then it's the administrator that.
Why not just wording that the administrator with the approval of council shall, blah, blah, blah.
I don't really care either way, I just want to make sure that we know what it says, because I was unclear.
Well, could no, section, the last sentence of paragraph B, fixes the issue.
No contract divided to equipment, that's not, the council. Let me read B.
The council awards it, and the administrator,
Carries it out.
yes, executes.
Is the signer of the contract, is really what that's getting them, ability to do.
Right, is to sign it next.
But
The council shall award a contract to the lowest and best bidder, provided the council may reject any and all bids in whole or by items. No contract shall be divided to avoid the requirements of competitive bidding. So council definitely approves the contract, but it's the administrator who physically goes and is the liaison and is the signator and
Yes.
Beautiful.
all those things under this language.
Okay, so section
So-
B is the council shall establish procedures for competitive bidding, including a threshold amount for requiring competitive bidding, notice provisions, and such other procedures as it deems appropriate. So that, instead of being statutory, here's the amount, council gets to decide that it's not enough written in stone for the next 100 years. Is that what we want?
Yes.
Any other questions?
I just remember someone saying they didn't want that, but I don't remember who.
Oh, you're right,
Was it
and one time you were
Jen?
talking about setting the price, or is that?
That was,
So that's where we're at. We're
That's
at-
what I thought, yeah.
So the way this is reading, if I'm reading it correctly, council, and it's presumably council rules, will establish that threshold. By council rules, they'll say that threshold is $100,000. And then while that rule is in effect, any project over that threshold would be required to go through the competitive bidding.
I thought we were gonna put
I'm sorry,
something in our,
percentage, right?
I can't see.
Percentage
That
of the
has to
budget.
do with,
Hold on.
So-
If you could reread the section on the bid, I'll hear
The council shall establish procedures for competitive bidding, including a threshold amount for required competitive bidding.
Notice
So-
provisions and such other procedures as it is appropriate.
Yeah, that's correct. I could fully agree.
So, I mean, that is a lot of authorization, that I think that is a flexibility I'm okay with, but I really wanted that number really high, so I may not be the person to listen to here.
but did we
I think
already
about
put-
it as council, this is gonna be part of council rules, this is something that they can change on a yearly basis to meet the needs of the village at any given time, I think this is an appropriate power for council to have.
Or not just at a yearly basis, but they could change it at.
Yeah, they could vote to,
It was.
Yeah.
Yes,
The percentage for you.
readings, that certain things had to have the 3 readings, et cetera. So
Yes, I'm
Yes.
looking for this language and what it says. I'm looking for our,
So they could set this and that resolution would still apply.
yes, this is irrespective of the readings rules.
So it's up to council to decide what the,
Whether or
Threshold.
not, so the threshold is to take something to competitive bid.
Because in 2019, $50,000 might be appropriate, but in 2059, it might need to be bumped up to $200,000, who knows?
I thought we were gonna set it as a percentage of the budget.
No,
We
you never have.
did that for the readings rule.
yes, they can't dispense with reading any ordinance that's going to contain information of village sewer, sanitary, water lines, and the road construction or expenditures of more than 5% of the annual general fund appropriation. And that was just that they can't waive the 3.
I understand, but I thought we talked about competitive bidding and that we were not comfortable with leaving it open for them to set the limit.
We have talked about it, I don't know that we have that specific, because I don't know that the idea of letting council set it had ever come up until we just read the sentence, right? And but I know that we have bandied numbers about it, right? And we, currently statutory is 50,000, I'm sure I said 200,000, and, someone said 5,000, right? So,
And we want council to be more involved. I think,
so if council said, oh, the.
I guess I think it evolves over time, it seems to me like this is something that council can decide.
So let's play it out, right? So things that could happen, right? A project could you have an idea? So right now we'll use the current example, right now we have the stormwater project that's on East Shore Court.
Yeah.
Right? We eyeballed it and said, oh, that's gonna be over our $50,000 threshold, let's change council rules to accommodate that project, because we don't actually think that one is worth bidding out. Now, they have a means by which to circumvent a control. Now, again, this is the first time I had this idea that council could set it on their own, and it's interesting, but it also feels like a control that is easily circumvented.
Yeah.
So the dam, if MI hadn't done it as part of our agreements with them, that was probably about $1 million project, right? With these rules, a council could say, maybe we don't need to take that out to competitive bidding, we'll just change our rule this year.
oh, I don't.
No, I'm not saying that they would, I'm saying that this,
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
saying that this rule doesn't preclude that. right? Maybe at that point, council's got, a buddy who's in dam repair or something, yes.
It's possible, it's out there, but it is possible. So what I'm hearing is you're wondering what the check would be.
Right.
So there's language, I think that was alluded to in this document concerning sole source providers.
Right.
So, and there's certain requirements under state law, and I don't know them all off the top of my head, but you can't just sole source provide unless you have a very good reason for doing so. You gotta be careful of that. You can get a lot of people in trouble.
Forgive my ignorance, because that's obviously a term of art. What is sole source provided?
So if I'm giving a bid to someone and say, hey, you want to come give me, like if it's a buddy or if it's somebody, not a buddy, but if it's some guy I met and he says, hey, I could do this project for you for $50,000, as an example, right? Like, but I'll help prepare all the documents and stuff like that. And yeah, that's more than you think. And you're like, okay, that's great, but I'm gonna bid it. He's like, well, I'm not doing this if you're gonna bid it. I just want to go ahead and get the work. Okay, well, it sounds like a fair term. We'll just go ahead and, give us the stuff and we'll provide it to you, as an example. So he alludes, the language specifically talks about it here. And you have to be careful about that stuff. And he did talk about it. So, let me find it.
I think actually.
Emergency, he calls it single provider in E, but it's sole source is what it is.
Finish the sentence. Let me finish section B. I think we stopped too soon in the conversation right away. At the council's discretion, such procedures may contain a prohibition against awarding a contract in excess of a specified percentage of an engineer's estimate when any contract for the construction of public improvement or the purchase of equipment, supplies, or materials is estimated to exceed the competitive bidding threshold established by council. The contract shall be competitively bid with less exempted under section something. The council shall award a contract to the lowest and best bidder, provided that council may reject any and all bids in whole or by items. No contract shall be provided to avoid the requirements of competitive bidding. Okay, did not address that, so I'm sorry.
So,
I had a question.
Yeah, when it gets out that the dam cost the village $4 million in taxes.
Dick, you need to stop right there. The dam did not cost the village $4 million.
Is the highway fully told us?
The dam did not cost the village $4 million.
Let me finish. I think it did because it took out from the tax money that would have come to the village, didn't it? Come out of that.
It is, part of what is reimbursing MI for that work is the $4 million that is coming out of the TIF. But that $4 million is not solely the dam.
How much of it is the dam?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but it's not 4 million, it's million-ish.
Yeah.
Right, so there's, I don't know off the top of my head, I have to look that number up. We have numbers.
I don't mean not
Yeah.
just the general dam and what other
But
things.
all that roadway,
And everything that
All the
MI
sewer.
gets reimbursed for out of the TIF, up to $4 million, they must provide work receipts for.
Yep.
So they have to say, we built this thing, we did this work, it cost us this much, and they get up to $4 million out of the TIF.
Yep.
It was not just the dam.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it was, since MI managed it, and there was no contract for competitive bidding, was there?
if I may. So the way this works, this is not the same thing, right?
No, it isn't.
If I may, if you go out here and say, I'm gonna redo Minerva Park Road, you're gonna get bids for it, and it's a separate, that's a different issue. When you have a development like this, in which you are working with a developer, there are incentives that go into the project, any project, it's an economic development project, okay? You wanna get that done. Developer says, hey, infrastructure is gonna cost me X amount of dollars. Hey, we can set up a TIF and help reimburse you for X amount of dollars, which helps bring your profits in line so that you can go ahead and go forward with this, and it makes it helpful for everybody to do. The village gets new population, the village gets new subdivision, the village gets new roads as part of that, and MI gets to make money. That's how it works.
So hold on, let Dick finish his statement, because we've interrupted the fund now. Dick, go ahead.
I am concerned that on large projects, and I'm talking about really large projects, that we should have something in there that sets a limit and requires competitive bidding over 10%. You know, I don't want to set a high figure. I don't want to strangle the village, but I think that this could be a sticking point in selling it, that we have put a limit where they have to have competitive bidding.
I don't disagree with you, but now we're back to arguing about a number. So what's your number?
10% of the operating budget.
So operating budget was about 2 million, 10% is 200,000?
Yes.
I'm in.
That's his number.
That was my number.
That's his number.
How do we get back to making Brian happy? It's so good.
So that means that council should say, we need to have $200,000 worth of this and $200,000
So,
worth of this.
no, that would mean that, no.
No, different project.
Yeah, so that would mean that council's looking at a project that the engineer's estimate is $199,000. Council would not be required to take that out to competitive bidding. Right? That's what that means.
Oh, but bigger things like lake dredging absolutely has to go out.
Anything like
Yeah,
that.
we're not 400,000.
No, like half a million.
Okay, well, then that's fine.
Not hard to spend 200 grand, folks.
Yeah, I
On
know.
any major project,
Well,
you're
that's
gonna
what I'm
spend
trying
$500,000.
So I'm trying to wrap my mind around what would be under $200,000 and what would be over, like, give me.
So a park, so for instance, if I want to build a gazebo and I build some concrete, you're probably gonna get it under 200 grand. The vast majority of projects, anything with your infrastructure, it's always, I'm hard pressed to find something less than 200 grand.
Why do you think the legislature put 50,000 then?
Because it's an old number.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should probably go back and see when that was made.
Update the law, so why?
They don't do that, they don't do that often.
But why should that?
I'm just saying, why?
Well, I
Did
think that's, I think that's.
everyone-
the answer.
Did everyone hear what Evan just
I
said?
did not, sir.
Kim Foley submitted 100,000 when she spoke to us, but I think that it just speaks to not necessarily the hardest of the number, but that the 50K is far too low.
Yeah,
Right. I think we
So
agree on
I just want to have something
Yeah,
there.
no, I am not opposed to having a number, because again, this is a control without, this is the box.
So are we all agreeing?
Yes, you're all agreeing.
I gotta say, I agree with Nick, I would prefer a percentage over a hard number.
Can we do a show of hands too?
Nope.
Once the hard number, he doesn't care.
And every 2 years, you can change it.
Well, no, a percent, right?
A percent.
of operating budget. That's fine.
need to vote on the future.
Okay, 1%.
Every
Well,
2
percent.
years.
Okay, I just want to get an idea if we're all arguing the same point.
So what you're saying is,
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't operating budget should all these other things you're spending money on.
No, we're using operating budget as
It's the benchmark, it's that's, we have an operating budget of $2 million, and we say it's 10% of that.
Will the operating budget change?
Yeah,
Yeah.
every year,
The appropriation will go up, so then that percentage goes up.
yeah,
or if it goes down because the village is operating that far.
the dollars will change 1%.
So if the operating budget goes up to $5 million, now we're up to.
If we're flush with cash, we can
Yeah.
worse
It's an awesome place to be.
And then-
And if it
Yeah.
goes down,
That's the idea.
So one question, are we against competitive bidding, are we for it, and is it just that it's a lot of work to do competitive
Right,
bidding? or-
what is the issue with competitive bidding?
So,
So my,
go ahead.
So I was gonna say, competitive bidding, you need to do competitive bidding, right? Competitive bidding is really good
Yes.
for everyone overall. Whether I've got a private project or a public project, you should do some form of competitive bidding. No one's arguing, I don't think anyone's arguing against that. It benefits you to know what the prices are out there, to get people to come in and give you different ideas, right? Okay. What I think you're being argued about is both your type of bidding, right? Because there's these straightforward forms of bidding where you don't necessarily have a design build. In today's world, it's good to have, especially in government, you need to be as flexible as you can. So if I'm out there and I've done private projects and I've got a $4 million bid, and they come in and they're all a little bit higher, right? And then I go back to the owner and I gotta say, we're a little bit higher. And he's like, that's fine. We're only 200,000 over. Let's get the project done. So he's okay. Now, in government, that could be a major problem. You may have to reject all bids at that point, unless you have some flexibility for going over the estimate. If it's a design build bid project, you can come back And you can say, all right, guys, let's do some value added engineering here and let's get rid of this. And so you change it midway through. People can come back to you. You select essentially your lowest and best. And then you go back to that guy and you say, hey, let's fix this. Where can we take out 100 grand here? How do we make that a little bit better? And it gives you flexibility to adjust the project. Otherwise, you're gonna have to go back out. And let me start the first thing, it's a pain in the butt to go back and rebid everything. It takes a lot of money, time, and effort, and you don't wanna do that. Because it could be instead of 3 months, now you're 6 or 7 months down the road.
The first going out is okay, it's just that you have to keep going.
Yes, you want that flexibility.
Deb, I'm gonna come back to you. Did that answer your question?
Well, I think if you made a bid documents, I don't know, to tell them what they wanted, whoever you are, whether you're a private entity or a government entity, you can pretty much lock in what project you want. I agree there may be some issues, maybe some environmental issue comes up. If you write a good bid package, you pretty much know what it is you want. I have fear that you can have a council that says, no, I'm not going to spend the money. So I got it coming in, it's coming in and we're rolling it.
Well, I
And
think requiring bidding isn't gonna prevent council from spending money. If they've got a $200,000 project in mind, they're gonna spend 200 grand, whether it has been bid out to the lowest available contractor or they hired Frank, their cousin. They're gonna spend 200 grand either way.
then you might get those back and low.
I guess from everything Eric just said, what I'm confused about is why would we want the higher limit? What's the benefit of the higher floor?
The higher floor, so if you have, so let me use OS as an example, since I worked there for a couple of years. They have a lot of infrastructure projects down there, okay, and mostly because they've got a very varied industrial sector. And so one of their issues is they were constantly trying to do things quickly, right? So they had, and here it's not so much a worry, right? Here you're just gonna do the residential roads and things of that nature. Down there, he was dealing more with electrical items, they had a utility, they had things they had to put in quickly, they had some major people, including Amazon, coming in, so you have economic development projects coming in on a large scale, and you had all these small things you had to get done, and you didn't want to have to worry about bidding things out constantly, because it's a time delay. In those situations, time delay can lose you 500 employees, 1,000 employees, or a company, right? So it's a different situation, because they may go somewhere else, right?
Are we really in that position?
You're not,
No.
I'm saying, I'm giving you an example of when it's useful from the standpoint. Your bid limit you're setting is gonna be just fine.
So another example is when it becomes a pain, if you are close to that limit and all your bids come in over. If you don't have the flexibility, then
Yes.
you can't rewrite the bid, you have to go back and do everything all over again. You can't just say, hey, well, we don't actually need the fireplace in the house, we can just take that right out, now can we hit the limit fine? So you have to have some flexibility in what you're putting out to bid and also in price range.
You do-
That helps you.
There is language that the attorneys provided also, because through the engineer's estimate, and I would say engineer/architect's estimate, because you're gonna get, sometimes it's gonna happen where prices have gone, inflation has happened to you, right? And in a short amount of time, suddenly, like when the Iraq War happened, all plywood went up significantly, and it's really screwed up a lot of bid packages in that time frame, right? Those things happen. So you want some ability to go beyond it,
So that's why materials, so any contract for the construction of public improvement or purchase of equipment, blah, 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 exceeds competitive bidding threshold, has to be competitive bid unless exempted, goes to lowest bidder. I don't really see anything wrong with this. I think that it meets what we're all talking about. Does anyone have concern with language and B?
Well, right now, B is saying the council just gets to decide it.
They can decide.
We're talking about not letting council get to decide it.
So that's,
At a high level.
so can we add something about percentage? So including a threshold amount.
So you're talking about changing this.
Well, there are other, procedures. Other than just
Maybe just
I
say,
would just take out the threshold.
or you could just say, the council shall establish procedures for competitive bidding, including a threshold amount requiring competitive bidding not higher than 10% of the village budget,
Perfect.
comma, and such other provisions as.
Did we decide on 10%?
I just use that as an example.
So I'm gonna throw a monkey wrench in this. Do we want to stick with a lower floor because of what we're about to read and see.
I do not want us to aim for a dollar amount lower than 100,000. That was Ann Foley's recommendation, right?
Then the percent would be 5%.
Percent would be fine.
Well, that would be lower, well, if not higher than.
Well, he,
Well, I'm
he's
saying
not lower
we
than
should-
100,000.
Yeah, so the number that we're sort of implying should not be lower than 100,000.
Higher than 10% or lower than 100,000. I'm sorry, I'm still.
No, look, if council wants to set their own rule less flexible than we're giving them,
Yeah.
that's fine. But I'm saying that we should be providing a guidance that, you know, hey, it will be okay if it's up to $100,000 that you are exempting competitive bidding,
Well, let's do it with a percent.
And then, but not higher than.
but not, right, yeah.
Yeah.
They can set it for, yeah.
And let's have a vote on 1%.
I don't know that, I don't know
Where?
what it is, I don't understand.
Okay, that's okay. So, go ahead.
No, go ahead, I'll wait on the question.
No, but I think you could, no, go ahead. I was being lost.
No, that's not, I'm not.
I'm not, I'm so
Oh,
confused,
go
so,
ahead.
yeah.
Nor lower than, isn't that, we didn't want a lower than either.
That's, thank you, you're in my same boat.
You're saying 5% that was.
Like if we say 100,000 is the lowest, they can't come back and say, no, we want to bid out anything over $5,000.
Well, they can. That's council causing their own problem. So,
That's
Right.
fair.
And I guess if they feel that they need that level of oversight and control,
Yeah, they can lower it.
then that is within their purview, I think.
So we don't care about.
Because even in today's statutory rule, they can choose to bid out anything.
Yes.
Where you can.
I like it as it is.
Yeah, 5%.
Then, so now we need to pick a number.
X is a variable number.
Or,
My type of sentence.
Okay.
Well, should it say requiring competitive bidding on projects that are higher than X amount of the annual per bid?
It
we're
does,
saying,
I mean, it's like a negative.
we're saying
I know what you're saying.
that the threshold,
shall
They cannot move the floor beyond.
She's questioning the language that we're using.
Yeah.
So the council shall establish for competitive bidding,
I
including a threshold amount requiring bidding not higher than
hold that,
10% or whatever, the annual fund appropriation.
Is that legal? In bold? Red highlighted,
comic sans.
impact funds.
Stop, all right, stop. Come on, guys, we got a half hour. Okay, good plan.
I do want to get a grasp of what this is. So, shall establish procedures, including a threshold amount requiring competitive bidding, not higher?
No higher.
They can't make it
Any higher.
$1 million threshold.
Okay. They can make it, but they can't make it higher than.
Right, anywhere between 0 and some percent of the annual.
Not competitive bid.
All right. I guess the two numbers being thrown around are 5% and 10%. Who has strong feelings one way or the other?
What are- what are the current
And
numbers right now?
appropriations now.
Right now, that would be either 100,000 or 200,000. Ish.
What's the subject of that sentence? The subject, it's
Procedures,
council, procedures, it's procedures, right?
Yes, for competitive bidding.
So procedures not higher than 10%,
No.
that doesn't make sense.
No, the
The
threshold,
council shall establish procedures for competitive bidding. It's
All right.
the subject of the
All right,
sentence.
so it's procedures, we're getting through procedures.
including a threshold amount
That's part of the.
that requires competitive bidding not exceeding X.
Not higher than five, not higher than, let's say, $100,000. Okay, let's just pretend that the X percent we know is a dollar figure.
Yeah.
So it's gonna say, shall establish procedures for competitive bidding, including a threshold amount for requiring competitive bidding, not higher than $100,000.
Not to exceed X percent.
But usually that threshold is a low number, right? Or is it high?
Yes, that's what we've been,
That's how that sentence works, so I see where you're at.
it is currently 50,000.
Okay, and you don't want them too high,
Correct.
when they don't need to have.
Right. Do they have to follow the procedure? Or, hold on, I think maybe I have a language clearing up that may help. Deb. So including a threshold amount and then move the not higher than there. A threshold amount, comma, not higher than X% of the annual fund
That is not higher
appropriations.
than X amount.
Right. For requirement.
Yes.
Right, we're just moving the,
Yes,
moving the
that would help.
modification closer. You're bringing your,
They're not writing the sentence for you.
Yeah.
and
The subclause.
Understand what you guys think.
No, these first 5 days.
I'm sorry, I understand what it says, but I'm also in the room, so I can see how somebody could misread it.
Okay, your mouse is a little on the.
Language is our enemy.
No, well, you know, when it's in the law, you play around with it, you better get it right.
Oops.
yes.
Then that company's
So if
going,
they send
Get rid of it, we want.
that one.
No, you just said you would have lost out.
The council shall establish procedures for competitive bidding, including a threshold amount not higher than council.
Yeah.
You guys put it on the wrong place.
Sorry.
No, that's right, no, that was right.
You guys, I don't care about comma, we only have so much time, we'll figure out the comma.
Yeah.
Hang on. Okay.
I like the whole, I thought it read better than how it was.
There is a good way to say it.
I totally get it.
Here's what I'm gonna,
Make it purple.
and I'm gonna make it a different color, and I'll deal with it.
Okay,
There you go.
and now we need to.
Now we need to set it.
Now I need to set a number, 5 and 10 are the numbers on the table. Anybody have any other numbers on the table? Anybody, auctioneer, anybody? All right, let's vote on, who wants 5%? I think it's supposed to be right.
Honestly, I don't care.
Oh.
This isn't an actual vote. We're still trying to approve anything.
We're getting a sense of the room so that I know what to draft for when we do this.
Who wants 10%? Are we even?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Seven and a half.
You know what? We'll come back to it later. Let's move on. We're on C. We're leaving it as that order.
It's almost in vote, because I don't honestly give a fuck what the time is.
Well, then,
Yeah.
one, and then we can have a number on the page.
I feel like there are people who will care,
I do
passionately,
too.
who are not.
I'm just not one of them.
Well, what-
It's one of them. It's 7
Ladies
to
and
3.
gentlemen, if I may,
It's 7 to 3 would be it.
including you. I feel like there are people who are not in the room today who will care, so let's have a conversation for later.
All right.
C.
C, by an affirmative vote of at least 5 of its members, council may waive the competitive bidding requirement in section 9B if the council determines that an emergency threatens public safety or property, or an item or service is only available from a single source or provider, or when funding could be lost due to time constraints, or if the council determines that a waiver of the competitive bidding requirement is in the best interest of the village. So basically for more or less any reason,
So I
they
would,
could just waive this whole thing.
I would take out that last.
Yes.
clause.
Yes, I would too.
And then I think it's okay, because what this is about is when the water main breaks and we need immediate service, they need to be able to act immediately.
Yeah.
That's where,
But not at any time they say it's in the best interest.
Yeah, take out.
We need that amusement
Public
park,
safety or property.
carousel.
So I'm just pressing the old delete button.
Amen.
And do we want it just, and five like we have for most things? Not super, or not majority. Okay, that's good.
5 is majority, I mean,
should make a majority.
It's not making it right.
Fingers are slim, no.
there's a crowd.
There are practice in there.
D, the administrator shall select the construction project delivery method that in the administrator's sole discretion is in the best interest of the village, which project delivery method may include, without limitation, construction manager at risk, design build, design bid build, single prime contracts, or any other method of project delivery, period, because that sentence was just. However, the council shall have the authority to direct the administrator to select a particular construction project delivery method.
So that's not the administrator's discretion.
Correct. I don't know why you would say sole discretion in the first sentence when you have that second sentence there.
Just take away the second sentence.
What's the advantage of this entire thing?
I don't know what a full, I don't know what delivery, project delivery method.
All of those refer to words that mean nothing to me.
I know, it's very important.
So I know a couple. So I believe I know a couple, and Eric, you can correct me where I'm wrong, but design bid build is what we do today, right? So you have to go and you do a contract to design your project, and then you go out and bid.
That's what you want to do. That's what you want to do.
I think we want design build too.
You do.
Well, it's listing both of them.
Yeah, so
Describe
there's
what they are.
the design bid build, which is you're separating the project.
You're paying someone to design the project, paying someone
Yes.
to build the project.
They may not be the same person.
It's people.
Right, and you have to bid both of those processes out if they're over your bid threshold. Design build allows you to take those two parts of the project and do it all in one project delivery. So you can go to one company that specializes in design and build, and they will design your project and build your project all in a single process. That's what, Rick Walsh's company specializes in, as I understand.
No, actually, they,
Okay.
okay.
All right,
But they do do-
that's- so what's the advantage of this paragraph at all? Like, I don't see what we're trying to accomplish.
Flexibility.
But this is one of the things that our attorney in memo said that
Yeah.
they felt we
They
should.
felt that was
So
necessary.
currently, so some of these are cheaper for some kinds of projects than others. Right, so design bid build is, to my understanding, at least 30% more expensive for the same project than design build. For no other reason than the overhead of having to do bidding twice and, having to deal with two different companies, it's typically gonna run you 30% more.
So what this says to me is, say we're all on the village council, we don't know what design build, and we might not know, we might research it, but, so we're relying on someone we all expect to be a professional and to know all these terms of art to decide which in the best interest of the village will help us most. So I don't see why taking it out is a good idea.
Well, so we take out the yellow sentence, which contradicts the rest of the white sentences?
Yeah.
We want to keep the whole, yeah. Keep.
It doesn't contradict it, it just says the council can step in and say, no, we want design build. If they
So
want.
take out the word solar.
Alright, so,
But there's not their sole discretion if they can be.
yeah, that's fine.
So what am I taking out?
The word, this word right here.
Methods of the council is, following the administrator, they all, they propose.
And the yellow is gone for now, is that right?
No, it's there.
Is there,
It came highlighted, Paul highlighted.
do we want?
Those are the changing
Yeah.
parts.
Do we want the council to be able to step in or not? In case it is what it comes down.
I mean, I'm gonna say yes, because there may be a reason that council wants to do it a different way.
I guess, okay, I'm sorry for slowing us down, but I'm so on my depth with this particular stuff. I need, maybe from Eric, I guess, a real world example from start to finish in a council, mayor, administrator form of government. What would a project actually look like? Because I'm having trouble figuring out why is this provision, why are we being told that this provision is necessary? Isn't what's actually gonna happen in the real world, everyone's gonna be aware, this sewer system needs replaced. It's not a secret to council or to the administrator. the administrator is gonna work with the, sewer subcommittee and the sewer commission, and everyone's gonna work together to come up with a plan. They're all gonna be talking about I just don't understand it.
So a wonderful example. I went through many issues with one project, and fortunately for us, it was a design build project. So I'll tell you what could have happened and gone wrong, because it was all time constrained to boot. So here's what occurred. So when I was in town, and I was there for a good 8 years, during the Obama era, there was the shovel-ready projects that were truly not shovel-ready. But anyways, I put in a grant. I got $1 million from the government. It took a year for me to get rewarded. They were very excited about it, right? So at that point, we had $1 million, and we had to go through, I'd already developed a scope in the grant, and it dealt with alternative energy, solar panels, and how we would do it. At the time, my assumption, of course, was the village, the city there, had bought for themselves a private building to put their offices into. Was a 20,000 square foot railroad truss factory. And originally they had moved into it when they'd outgrown their space, with 10,000 square feet. And then at the time I came on board, which was 2005, they were starting to build a police building on the back end. They were building another 10,000 square feet. Everyone, now at the time, you don't normally spend $10,000 on a structural engineer at the time. You put it in your grant because, the council wasn't going to spend the money to see. So I had to put everything in the grant that I thought was necessary and see what would happen. But once we got into it with, we bid everything out, okay? And everything was designed, and we selected Thomas and Marker. They were the lowest and best, and by the way, they weren't the lowest, but they were the best. So they were about 3 tiers up from, about $20,000 more dollars than the lowest, but from our interviews and everything, they were the best to do it. And we were fortunate that we picked them to do it because we ran into a major problem actually. Right in the middle of it, the structural engineers got involved at that point, looked at the building and said, oh, your old roof that you got on there can only support about 1 pound per square foot. That would be a problem because the balanced solar system is about 8 pounds per square foot. So it was just able to support snow load. That was a major issue. So no one panicked. We also at the table and talked about this. And there were some solutions, some of them not better than others. You could spend some more money, put holes through the building to support the roof. That would look so pretty. And what we came up with as we kind of went through it was, you go there now, we put it onto we moved the solar panels to 2 different structures out off the roof. So what we did is we created a carport for the police cars, for the cruisers, put some solar panels there. And then we got council to go along and spend a couple $100,000 extra on top of the $1 million and basically build a shelter, big shelter. You can go up there and see it. So it's wonderful. And that's how we got around it. However, if we were in a standard bid, design bid, we had designed it, was not the spec at that point. We had to alter it. We would have had to go back out again for another bid, right? We couldn't have built it based on the original spec. That's the problem with the law. We couldn't have used the company because design had changed significantly at that point. We had to take it off the roof and build whole new structures. Because we had designed, and Rod again was our special counsel for construction at the time, the OBETS administrator, who became future administrator, was the mayor at the time. We wrote that in such a way that allowed us to do a design bid build, and because they were a charter, they were able to do that. And so we were able to successfully save ourselves time because you run a limitation for that grant, right? So had we not been able to change it midway through, we would not have made the end date to which to have the project approved and accept the money from the Fed.
So really what this provision is saying is that the administrator with some council oversight can at any given time change the nature of the bid process so that it fits the project.
Correct.
Okay, I'm good.
It's usually written in the contract, whatever state contract is.
I'm sold.
Okay. Any other questions on D?
And we're keeping the 8, however,
Yes, so, but we got rid of soul.
but that's right.
So writing that right now, I think gives the administrator discretion to do it
Yeah,
as they want, but if there's something council specifically wants a certain way, they can say, hey, on this one, let's do this.
so we can run that.
care about highlighting.
Yeah, this is a separate Word document, it's not even in the draft.
Okay, E, notwithstanding any provisions or laws of the state of Ohio, contractors and vendors shall not be entitled to receive interest on funds temporarily retained on contract pending final acceptance of work performed or goods supplied, nor shall the village be required to maintain a separate escrow account to hold such retained funds. I would almost want Kim to chime in on that and say, what are we doing today? And
But
what would
let's just say,
this change?
let's just say if we're holding somebody else's money in the course of a project, we don't have to pay an interest on it.
I understand that.
We never want to pay anybody interest if we don't have to.
I understand, but I don't know what that would impact me for doing.
Wouldn't we want to send this to her to read through and give us notes before we
Yeah, that's fine.
finalize the whole thing? So maybe she sees something that we don't see.
So I mean, that's the only thing I have on that. Anyone else on me?
I can imagine Kim's gonna want to take it. Can we do that now? Are we required to do it?
No, just-
Well, we are by provision of the state of law, of Ohio, so at the end of this.
So that would trump the charter anyway.
Right, yeah.
So I would have it in there.
Just in case.
Well, that way,
A contract.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say, I think the charter can,
Yeah.
that way, if the contractor asks for it, we can say, no, we can't do it.
It doesn't hurt to have the language that it covers yourself under home
So
rule.
a contractor could say, you're gonna be holding
Part of the contract.
this money for me, it's this reimbursement, so like, the people who actually did the work on the dam, we probably held that money here for some amount of time, and as we said, it was about $1 million. $1 million earns a fair amount of interest, right? It could have been in the contract that we had to pay them interest. This provision says, you're not entitled to any interest on it. Yeah, this is,
F,
Contracts or other agreements for professional services, including without limitation, architectural, engineering, surveying, testing, inspection, and legal services, shall not be subject to the competitive bidding requirements of this section and shall not require authorization by the council if the current operating budget provides sufficient funding for the services to be provided, or if the council has otherwise appropriated monies for such services.
So you can have a $200,000 or $300,000 engineering.
If in January, council appropriates 50 grand to hire a lawyer, then in March, the administrator can hire a lawyer, don't have to.
so what I think this was really saying is, so again, engineers is probably the best example of this, right? EMH&T, who is Jacobs, right? Jacobs is the village's engineering firm, that's who we contract with, right? But they're doing a lot of work for the MI project. But because they were already our engineer and they were doing certainly more than $50,000 worth of engineering work, we didn't have to go out and rebid, or we shouldn't have to go out and rebid that engineering work because we're already under contract with them and we have those funds appropriated and it's sufficient for their work. That's what that's saying.
In that example, we also charge fees.
Yeah. MI is paying us.
Right.
We have to do like an appropriations dance to take in the money.
But we don't want to bid out another engineer to do what we have one.
anyone have any questions, concerns, or general confusion about that? Nope, all right. G, the council shall establish procedures for alterations or modifications of contracts. Modifications or alterations of contracts shall not require competitive bidding. Such procedures may include a requirement that the council approve cumulative contract modifications that exceed a specified percentage of the original contract value. And that percentage can vary by whatever is decided in the contract. Any questions, concerns, or confusion? I'm guessing there's.
I think that's kind of what Eric is talking about.
Do we want this? So my only concern here is established procedures just means rules of council. Do we want to specify that those established procedures need to be in the form of ordinance or resolution? Because that is ever so slightly more toothsome. Not a whole
It
lot.
wouldn't be a resolution, it would be an ordinance.
Yeah.
So really the choice here is, do we want it to be something that can be changed every year with council rule?
Or do we want it to be permanent until they pass a new law?
Yes.
Now, didn't we talk about, there might be some administrative policies and procedures and those kinds of things? Weren't they gonna be approved by council? Couldn't it just be our standing operating procedures for alterations of our?
Oh, yeah, we're talking about the village's administrative code.
Sort of more like, yeah, instead of,
But wouldn't that be the same as council rules, like modified?
well, council rules are how council just does the council stuff. These are the rules for the village.
I would agree with Pam on that.
The administrators.
But is it easier to change? the
I'm not a fan
administrative
of
or-
by ordinance. I like the permanency of ordinance, but because I feel like that might make it more attractive for people to contract with us because they know that that kind of rule isn't gonna change.
I like it because I think that it would make villagers feel more secure, and this is the way it's set up, and it's not really going to change every year. Not necessarily a contractor, but just as a resident, I feel like it's a more solid thing. Almost like a check and balance.
Alteration.
Yeah.
I don't know if those kinds of things go into ordinances.
Why does it have
I
Trump,
wouldn't it?
whatever the other one is, but now we're talking about.
We now have a procedure for
Contracts. So a contract, including without limitation, architectural engineering survey, blah, 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 shall not be subject to competitive bidding requirements of this section.
Professional services are different from things like a dam.
Right, but it says contracts or other agreements, no professional service.
Or professional services.
Services, not materials.
So it's contracts for professional services and agreements for.
All for professional
So it's not
services.
contract.
I don't know why other agreements is in there. To answer your question, those are being used as synonyms.
So maybe contracts for professional
Yeah.
services. Okay, because I would read it as contracts without limitation are not subject to competitive bidding, and I say that.
That's for professional services only, not for actual, like, solid deliverable.
Right.
How's that?
That's all. My second question is, if you don't have competitive bidding, and you're talking about the council has to write ordinances or resolutions, whatever you say, what is the process you have to use, or is there no process if it's not competitively bid?
No, we're not getting rid of competitive bidding, that's just for all.
No, for those
modifications.
projects that are under the threshold.
Like proposals, not.
Oh, we're gonna hire
just
someone and pay him $5,000 to
No, well,
build an urban embankment or something.
100,000 or 200,000, but that was the, let's.
Well, the 5,000 is below all thresholds.
That's what I'm saying, that's why I use that as an example.
No,
So you're saying if a project.
it's not
doesn't-
competitively bid. Are there any procedures that we want to say have to be followed, or is it just, okay, well, we want contract? I mean, you have procedures for alterations and modifications of contracts. What is the procedure that will be followed if a contract is not competitively bid, or will there be?
There are things that have to be thought out.
So councils can set their kind of criteria and how they want to do that. A lot of times, like this council wants to make sure they get competitive bids, right? Or what I should say, quotes. Okay, so if they want to get, your 100,000, you still go out and you get 3 quotes as an example. If it's 20,000 or 40,000. If you want to put something in there, I don't know what other example exists in different charters, but it is your charter, so.
I'm just saying, if it's not competitively bid, what are we doing as far as? Are we doing nothing?
I think the idea of establishing the competitive bidding floor is that below that floor, council and administrators, it's just they're handling their own business. If it's something for $5,000 and they want to hire Bill from down the street, then that's what they do.
Yeah, it's a
I
big
think that's
difference than
what
500,000.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the point, it's a lot of money still, not have a procedure.
I agree, but
This is,
that's why I would go for a lower amount.
But it must be with, that's not a whole different council. My experience has been that councils do want to get quotes. They do want to hear from more than one person. Yeah, and, the mechanism, really.
All right, so we've gone through all of those, correct, Kelly?
Yes, this document has been,
Can you save the document, resend it to everybody on the commission, saying this is this, all the changes discussed, please review.
Decide on the same.
Well, please review and be prepared to come to speak to your thoughts and concerns at our next meeting. Got 10 minutes left to discuss our next meeting. Who all can make it Sunday? I was concerned people couldn't.
I cannot, I got.
Okay, everyone who can, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, so 8 of us, so. I just want to make sure it was enough to make it worthwhile.
I have a question on next meeting. No, next meeting, I can't make, but I do want to, if there's something on planning and zoning, BZAs or anything, if you could send me stuff forward, I'd like to review and help you out on that one.
All right, so we will still have the Sunday meeting then. I know people are going to this meeting. For our Sunday meeting, are we better served to review this again or tackle the next memo so that we can give Kelly something to draft?
I would say definitely tackle the next one because we're not voting on anything, so we have a lot more people here and there's no point in going over it again.
Yeah.
Perfect.
As an alternative, do you want to consider working on, in Article 7, there are 2 provisions remaining, Director of Safety and Personnel Systems.
Do we have that?
Shelley gave me some sample language for Safety Director from some other charters, and then Personnel Systems. I don't remember what our deal was, I just know that we blue lined it to deal with later.
No, I don't. We're not.
Okay. And then boards and commissions is more or less drafted, just not reviewed in any way, shape, or form.
And that's what Eric.
That's what Eric would like to see. So yeah,
Okay.
Eric, we can give you that section to review where we're.
I mean, it's up on, no, it's not, it's only one, it's in the one draft.
Oh, we can get you where we're at right now. Let us
I'll,
know where we've gone awry or where we've gone brilliant.
Yeah.
I'll make sure the current draft is uploaded to OneDrive.
What section is that even so sorry?
Article 8.
Alright. We will tackle the next memo on Sunday. We have an awful lot of
Which is
random
going
action items.
elections, initiative, referendum, and recall.
Cool. Action items, somebody was gonna get staff on similar municipalities, mayor and administrator salaries, as well as what the salary for the mayor is here now. And bring that back to the table for next meeting. Who was that?
Pam.
Pam, was that
I
you?
think, well, I was just gonna do the administrator, and look, and I was, how do you have it written? So that what,
Were you gonna look any further into the police budget?
I'll have something for Thursday.
And I just, after this meeting, I'll share with you a text too. I just asked if I had to speak to police officer, how they understood his work, so.
Okay.
Okay, newsletter, Dick, you were gonna draft something to present for everybody. By
I'm
Thursday?
not sure whether I can get it for the next villager or newsletter. I don't know. I'll try.
So it's the village update cutoff is probably, it's typically mid-month. So you have about 13 days.
Oh, I spoke a little too soon saying I was available. I'm under contract for the first 2 weeks of May. So
See
I'm,
what you can come up with.
I'll see
No
if I
pressure.
can get something, but I'd like to do more than one. I'd like to have a series.
Does anyone have handy, because I don't have my vendor with me, what our deadline was again? I know it was in June.
June 20th, I believe.
June 20th.
is what I raised my bell.
Alright, Shelley, you were gonna follow up on the bulk mail rate? Yes. And who else is permit for it? Brian, you were gonna ask some people to know about the details on that as well. Shelley, I wrote down something for you that I don't want to be.
I have a note here about utilities OPEX. And then I have to ask him how long the lead time they need for the deadline for the budget at the end of the year.
Thank you. And who were you gonna ask about utilities?
I don't know why I did, I was just gonna look at,
And we're gonna use OBETS, how they worded it, because they worded it really well.
okay, and I just was curious what it said, so I was reading.
And if we don't have anything now, we might have something in the future. So that's
Go back, pull it out, email it to everybody.
And then
Let's see where it goes in all this.
I owe Article 8, our current draft to you. Yeah, if you ladies find anything interesting about utilities, I'll be big into that. Okay. Any other action items of the minutes that I forgot? Is there anything from you? You were gonna send,
I've got notes to send, I'll email out that sample Article 9 to everybody, and I'll upload the current draft to OneDrive, and I'll be digging into police stuff.
and then by next meeting, do you think you'll have done it?
I don't have that document in there.
Never, you're right, you wait.
I can do it really quickly.
It's gonna be at the end.
Let's see if I get the info. Yeah, I've got a little template, so. let's see the numbers.
And I sent that to Kim, right?
We'll have the bill for the month, previous month, here next couple days. I can include that as well.
Paul did say in his latest email, that basically he's not doing any more work at this point. So, because he's sent us all the memos.
He has no pending tasks.
Right. So if we ask him to do something, he'll do it, but he's not doing anything on his own at this
I
point.
was most concerned right now with the mailing cost. So I think we estimated about 10 grand for that, so.
How much do we have left for that?
Well, I didn't know
How do we find the list of who to send it to?
Board, Franklin County Board of Elections, so it's,
Yeah, because the requirement
it's electors.
is electors, so that would be.
I mean, that would be, who has the information? How would we acquire
Yeah,
this?
It's on the website,
I think that's
in the
true.
spreadsheet.
That's lovely. When do we need to get it by in order to mail? And then also, when do they stop adding registered voters for that
So,
election?
So the real tricky part is it was anybody who was an elector of the village as of the last municipal election.
I just read the statute, and it may not be exactly that.
Okay, I'll double check.
Yeah,
So here's the real question, is it our responsibility to do that as the charter commission? Or is it council's responsibility to do that, having passed the ordinance to put it on the ballot?
To mail it or finance them? What are you asking?
To mail it.
Well,
It's a shall thing at this point.
well, yeah.
That's what I'm saying, the
Yeah.
language says the council shall pass an ordinance to
Yes.
put it on the ballot.
Yeah.
Does that mean that it's on us to physically go print off all the charters and
I
stick
would
them in the
really-
mail?
Because at least my recollection, I understand the statute was it didn't.
It doesn't specify a lot.
You're right, it doesn't specify who's responsible for it, so
If we want it done, we better do it
if we want
ourselves.
it, then we gotta do it ourselves.
Got it.
If we go for a budget, they're required to give us the funds.
Shall, yeah, but the mailing is required by state constitution.
They won't be happy about it, but they'll have to do it.
Okay, regarding the mailing, I have a question. For those of you familiar with the mailing of the newsletter, there's something about 50 pounds. It has to be 50 pounds to qualify. How many newsletters, at the time they were combined? I mean, how,
Mail?
yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he's
I mean, the bulk mailing has to weigh 50 pounds, those pieces of paper have to weigh.
No,
50
no,
pounds.
the whole mailing has to weigh 50 pounds.
Yeah, but all of the individual pieces.
Yeah, yes, and I was just curious.
Can I jump in on the
Yes.
administrative? Are we not, I'm talking about we, the village, are we not assisting you in mailing?
We'd love if you would.
I don't think provision has been made for that.
We're
Issue. But I'll ask the mayor.
Yeah, we can find that out, that'd be
Because
fantastic.
we did, I mean, that's not, it's shocking, because we already do bulk mailing. I know staff is happy to help them, help the force.
Well, yeah, because it's time sensitive, though, we don't want any missing of anything.
You don't understand. As long as there's a list of addresses provided, that's not a big deal. But I'll ask them there.
Let me know. Once. But I would say, the counties.
I probably, because usually right by the time it gets updated, I pull that down so I can see who all voted in the election, because I was like, I don't know.
So you get moved into the new part. But I see that as an action, I just need to get it out.
So I guess,
I'm not real happy with that.
no, yeah, so Nina did have a good comment there, and that is that we do have more and new residents. We should probably both make sure that we are getting everybody who was an elector of the village at the time, but we should also be capturing new registered voters as well.
As a courtesy, as a
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that, without a doubt.
Yeah, like a family king.
Those are actually, because, you know, it's tight with money, we can deliver them.
Yeah.
True, yeah.
Well, I don't know this issue, so we need to know who is sending, how many people, and also where they're. All right, it is 8:30. Anything else before we adjourn? Thank you.
Well, there was one thing.
Yes.
We had talked about getting together as a group and having a meal. And we were looking at May 11th. I'm wondering, if people would like to come over for soup.
Sue.
Soup and wine, I will be on campus.
Well, it won't be the only time.
Sure. Oh, next Saturday.
Yes, on this Saturday, today's Saturday.
And it was gonna be a really easy get together.
I'm brewing that day. Sorry.
So you'll feel like beer or?
Yeah, so, no, I probably will be going late into the night.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you all.
Okay.
So I probably won't be done until we can. Patrol can come out for beer afterwards.
Yeah.
I think you were thinking 6 to 8, right?
We were thinking
The beer, I
like,
hope,
yeah,
takes a little
like 6 to 8. So we can make it a progressive meal and go to Brian's after that. No, Nina and I will make, we'll get an email out because it's based on, a community in Portland that had these soup nights, where one person offers to have the meal and will make soup. You all bring your own bowls, you bring your own spoons, you bring your own wine, you bring your own anything else you want. But we'll make sure to give you a place to sit and soup, and kids are invited, and it's supposed to be just super, get it? Super easy.
So you sit there.
So, yeah.
Is
And,
that here?
no, at my house.
Oh, at your house, okay.
I'm
Hopefully,
sorry,
it won't be rain.
Huh?
Hopefully, it won't be rain.
Well, I think we could get everybody in my house. It'll be tight, but if you just eat wherever you
I'll
go.
just make it more fun.
Because you could probably move to my house if need be, because we can definitely accommodate everybody at my house.
And we can always bring the pasta soup. Yeah. So I'll send something out there.
Do you
Yeah.
like, hand count by a certain date?
Well, we can, yeah, we probably would like a number, but yeah, we'll find out.
Did you say May or June?
May 11th.
You won't be here.
We'll do it again. We want to see if this works.
Yeah.
And have it be easy and everything, and then, if it does work, maybe we do it. Yeah, do it again. Awesome.
I'm going to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Well,
Oh, anyone want to start a phone? Anyone?
I was sitting